Welcome. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I am Mayor Westmoreland, and today we have with us Eric McDowell, Chief Deputy with the Sheriff's Office. Thank you for being with us today.
Hey, glad to be here, Mayor.
So, in a growing city like Eagle Mountain, there's always new challenges and growth issues to deal with, and so we're always adapting, right? So, tell us a little bit about what the Sheriff's Department role is in Eagle Mountain.
Well, our role for the I guess since the inception or the incorporation of Eagle Mountain City, the city has contracted law enforcement services through Utah County, and so we've been out here for 20 plus years, being essentially your police force. So we handle anything criminal, civil. Pretty much we get the full gamut of calls out here. Currently we have 23 sworn officers that the city contracts for, and we have approximately 3 civilian staff, 1 full-time, 2 part-time.
Great. So that relationship with the county, I mean, there's several different ways we can approach that contract. One is it really appears from my perspective to be a mutually beneficial arrangement, a partnership. Financially, it's very efficient for the city because there aren't investments that we would have to make as a city that would just be redundant that the county, the sheriff's office, already has covered and we can tap into as needed. So from a city perspective, it's certainly one that works for us, and it appears from the county perspective that the county appreciates that relationship.
Yeah, I would agree, and I could speak for the Sheriff Mike Smith on this matter. I think the relationship's always been a cohesive. We look at each other as a family, a team, as long as everything's on the up and up as far as, costs, manpower issues that we address annually based on population growth and based on our call volume usually is how we look at that. The growing challenge for us right now is keeping up with that growth. As you guys know, it's hard. And to estimate how many officers you need just based on call volume's not necessarily a fair stat, but as certain crimes become more involved, more time consuming, sometimes even more dangerous, we have to take into account officer safety as well. And that's the utmost priority for us, is to make sure that we're adequately equipped with manpower, equipment, for handling all array of types of calls out here in Eagle Mountain. But as far as the relationship goes, we've always had that trust, and we've always trusted the city to do the right thing when we, have asked for these, issues to be addressed. And I think we're on the right track to, continue to bolster our department as the city grows and to handle these challenges that are present with us.
So certainly from both sides, we're always looking at the manpower issue, making sure that we have enough people staffed.
Sure.
To cover everything. But also one of the other advantages is, in an odd situation, there are resources that we can pull from.
Correct. I think an easy example for most people to understand would be like in an investigative process. Right now, Eagle Mountain contracts for 2 detectives through the Sheriff's Office. One being in the Special Victims Unit and the other one being in the more property, violent crime, regular detectives is what we call that. If a major incident happens on either side of that, you get the whole pool of resources. It's not just the 2 that you pay for. And I think that's something that is usually when I explain that to residents, the light kind of clicks on at that point, where other agencies that only have 1 detective, if they have a major incident happen or a major crime that happens, they usually have to rely on the graciousness of another agency to help them out. Where it's pretty much all inclusive with the sheriff's office. So that's the big bang.
Pretty seamless then when it's needed. And that's one of the things, often the question will come up, at what point does the city consider having its own police force? And one of the things to take into consideration as we look at that picture would be the upfront investments and covering those needs, like we just talked about, because we would have to pay for those resources up front because they wouldn't readily be available to tap into.
Yeah, and currently on some of those pooled resources or overhead issues that you're addressing or speaking about, right now it's a percentage of the contract cost that goes to an overhead to account for some of those redundant or pooled resources. Some of the things to keep in mind, currently, if the city did break off, it's those overhead costs such as like evidence storage, more clerical manpower, the evidence custodians, records clerks, those types of positions that are currently taken care of in the all-inclusive type package with a minimal overhead fee. Some of the other things to keep in mind too, because Utah County Jail is part of the sheriff's office, a lot of those transportation costs for people who have violated certain crimes out here that are currently in custody are being transported by jail transportation individuals under our umbrella, as opposed to having an officer on their own time come in for overtime to transport these individuals from the jail out to, if we had a justice court out here, for example. So that's all part of that inclusive plan that we are working with right now, or contract.
And as we grow and needs become more prevalent, certainly from a city's perspective, we can look at making those investments as we go. There's not just it's just not black and white. It's just not all or nothing. We can begin to build on that. We can make investments that will stay here in the city, as needed. So tell me. Another question that comes up is the relationship with our deputies and local code enforcement. Okay. So we have our code enforcement officers, we have our law enforcement officers, and that appears to be a relationship that works well. Can you give us insight on that?
Yeah, it definitely works well. Basically, the high volume of calls that we assist code enforcement with are usually, trying to identify parked vehicles that they're trying to address that violate a city code, but they may not violate a county or state code. And to explain that, let me backtrack on that a little bit. Right now, well, my whole tenure out here, and it's been over 14 years, the way it's been set up is that if we find a violation for like a parking issue or something like that, usually we have to find a state applicable code to write that citation on, which then goes to the Utah County Court, Justice Court, which is where we have the contract. The city in the past year has developed their administrative law judge system, and so we are working towards that end goal of having a lot of these city ordinances handled through that mechanism, as opposed to having law enforcement deal with some of these codes. But as far as the partnership goes, a lot of times we're identifying a vehicle to a particular home so code can make contact with that individual. I think we're on the same page as far as what we want is to address an issue and curb it at the lowest level possible. The sheriff's office has never been one that is looking for punitive means or recourse or anything like that. We're looking to just curb behavior at the lowest level possible, and I believe code enforcement is doing the same thing. So anywhere where we can assist them to get their job done and we can get our job done is ultimately the goal.
Well, we've really appreciated having you and all of the deputies here in Eagle Mountain and enjoying that relationship, and certainly appreciate your time here today. This could be a much longer conversation, but we appreciate your insights, so thank you for being with us.
Well, I appreciate the time, Mayor.
And thank you for joining us. Have a good day.